Penn State is set to hire Marques Hagans as the next wide receivers coach, and all I can say, this is a huge boost for recruiting.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. That is FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. My name is Zach Seyko, your host, and Marques Hagans is going to be the next wide receivers coach and offensive recruiting coordinator. And it's a huge boost for recruiting. We're going to talk about that in the opening segment here. Then get into Penn State wrestling as they beat Michigan and Michigan State. It's just not fair anymore when it comes to Cale Sanderson and the Nittany Lion wrestling team. And then we'll wrap it up and bring on Adam Sheetz, Penn State men's basketball insider, to talk about Micah Shrewsbury and the Nittany Lions as they are fresh off of a win against Nebraska. And they get to take on Rutgers here coming up as a very important quad one win if they can get it. We'll discuss and recap the last game and break down the one that they got coming up in Piscataway. But Marques Hagans, this is what everyone's excited about. I'm really excited about this move, and one that I didn't see coming, but I will explain it. I mean, it's a huge boost for recruiting. The bottom line is Penn State had an agenda. They set out to do this, and they wanted to go get somebody that was going to basically help them boost an area that they're already pretty sound in, right? Virginia started to become a better place to go get prospects, but why not add reinforcements if you feel that you can get better in that place? So the 757 is where everyone is constantly referring to with Hagans. It's the area code of the local area that he's affiliated with. Again, born and raised. I mean, he's just going to anchor the Virginia area where Penn State has already seen these gains. He's a likable coach, very likable coach. But I never would have expected Penn State to get Marques Hagans because Hagans eats, sleeps, breathes Virginia. He's a UVA legend. Born and raised in Hampton, Virginia, as I mentioned. He played quarterback in high school and then back and forth in college. It was between wide receiver and ultimately started at quarterback his final year. And then he was drafted to play wide receiver in the pros. He was with the Rams, the Chiefs, the Colts, and the Washington Redskins, who are now the Commanders. And actually was an emergency quarterback for the Rams, if you can believe that as well. Then Hagans became a Virginia graduate assistant in 2011. Makes perfect sense. And then he took over as the wide receivers coach from 2013 to 2022. So this is not only a big move for Penn State, but a big move for Hagans as well, who has had all the familiarity in the world with one spot, some place that he has been for majority of his entire life, outside of when he jumped around the NFL for a little bit. But it's been Virginia, born and raised Virginia football. And then he coached there and helped bring up another wave of young men. So just how good is Hagans? Because this is somebody that was on the radar for Penn State's wide receivers coach vacancy, but he wasn't necessarily a top choice. It was kind of we can name him, but we don't expect him to be there, be one of the main targets. And he ends up being that. Now, if you read what Virginia fans have said and people close to the program, I mean, they're upset, not in a bad way, but just remorseful in the fact that he was inspirational to the program. He's a legend in their minds, and it's a home run hire. That's what I've seen some people describe this as by Virginia people. They see this as a huge get for Penn State and just wish him well. He's a great technical coach. Very sound at getting wide receivers be better at technique. And if you go through and look at all the wide receiver groups, and I know what a lot of people are going to say. A lot of people are going to say, and we'll get into the drawbacks here, that, oh, well, he doesn't have a long list of NFL caliber players to go along with what he was able to accomplish at Virginia. So is he really that good? We'll get to that in just a second. But he's a great technical coach. He helps you get better. All the people that he coached up will attest to that. And he's a coach that everybody loves. Everybody loved him, from the wide receivers that were in the room to just everyone that was around him. Like, he's a very likable person. And I think that's something that Taylor Stubblefield wasn't hated, but maybe he wasn't good as good at developing those kinds of player to coach relationships as some people might see. So this is kind of a direction that Penn State is going in, where they want someone who's more than just X's and O's. They want someone that builds player relationships, that is a people person, and that's exactly what you're getting in Hagans. Nobody hates this individual. So Hagans is a great technical coach. He's a coach that everybody loves, respects, and he's also got a lot of connections to the Virginia area, as go figure, right? But he's close to Michael Vick. He's close to Allen Iverson. He's close to Ronald Curry. And that is going to bode well for Penn State as they continue to try to make inroads towards the general Virginia population rather than specific areas. So here's the drawbacks that people are going to ask about and say, well, he doesn't have enough players in the NFL. It's Olamide Zaccheaus. It is pretty much the only guy that comes to mind for the track record behind Hagans here. Undrafted, but a good career so far with the Atlanta Falcons, still in his mid-20s with the team. He's been kind of a rotational receiver, a depth piece, but you've seen him. He had a great career at Virginia, and that's a testament to Hagans. But the reason why there were so many that there can be drawbacks, and people might say, well, Hagans, we don't know that he has it. Virginia's system, the way that they operate, didn't allow for Hagans to necessarily reach his full potential. The way that they recruited, the style of teams. So that's kind of like saying, let's take, for example, the late, great Mike Leach. Okay. Mike Leach is a pass first, pass heavy offense with the spread system that he ran down at Mississippi State and all those other places. So, but can you expect the running backs to just absolutely overwhelm you at Mississippi State? That's kind of the same thing here. If I can draw that comparison for Virginia's teams, they recruited different. They were run first. They were option heavy. So the resources that were poured into wide receiver and pass catcher weren't necessarily a top priority. And then with that being said, I think Hagans now comes into a good place where he's going to get that support. He's going to have the Penn State brand. He's going to be able to attract wide receivers. And we've already seen early on that Hagans has already made some good connections with wide receivers who are interested out of the high school level, that they're very excited at the prospect of playing for a Marques Hagans at Penn State. So this is a huge recruiting move. And I'm not sure if Bobby Ingram had an interview or an opportunity. If they went to Hagans first and they said, all right, we got an agreement in place, let's move forward. For me, that's why I had the opinion. It just made sense to bring home a Penn State legend. Bobby Ingram, great career in the 90s, solid career in the NFL. And it just, why not want him back in Happy Valley, especially with the way that, he's available. And Wisconsin fired its coaching staff. Paul Chryst was let go, and it just made a lot of sense at the time. It made a lot of sense in the moment here. But Penn State clearly had a specific agenda, and they wanted to go get a guy like Marques Hagans. And Hagans is young. Hagans is 40 years old. So a good coach that's going to be able to continue to relate to groups of players as they come through. And I found this interesting. We'll finish on this note. People were surprised that Josh Gaddis wasn't hired. He's currently the Miami offensive coordinator, former Michigan offensive coordinator, was the wide receivers coach at Penn State. And I don't have an explanation for that. Like, I can't see why anyone would think that, because that should have been Josh Gaddis who was hired. People were more disappointed. This is similar to Joe Brady. Why on earth would Josh Gaddis return to his old position at Penn State? Offensive coordinator at Miami, just had a stint at Michigan. He's looking to be a head coach next. Why would he go backwards? And that just didn't make any sense to me. I didn't know this was a candidate that was supposed to be on our radar. I didn't know that Josh Gaddis was supposed to be a serious contender to be the next Penn State wide receivers coach when he's already done that. Why would he come back? So I know it's not everyone out there, but I found that very intriguing. The internet can be a fun place for discourse. It is Locked On Nittany Lions, and when we come back, Penn State wrestling they don't make it fair anymore. They toppled number 3 Michigan. They beat up on Michigan State. And we're going to discuss and have some takeaways from both of those dual meets. Next and later on, Adam Sheetz is going to join me to talk about Penn State men's basketball, recent win over Nebraska, game coming up against Rutgers. It is Locked On Nittany Lions. Today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. The NFL players are here, and we are really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sports book in America, and that is FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better because they have so many great features that make sports betting fun and easy. New customers join today to get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel has all your favorite bets from the money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance to add a bigger payout with same game parlay. All in the app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use, so football fans don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose. That's all at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thanks again for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen every day. Make sure to go check out the brand new show on the Locked On Podcast Network, and that is Locked On College Basketball. Everything you need to know about college basketball in one place. Plus, you get to hear from big-name experts, insiders, coaches, and players. That is Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. My name is Zach Seyko. And a huge shout out, big thank you to helping the YouTube channel get over 800 subscribers. Everyone really seemed to enjoy that the show that I devoted the segment to why Taylor Stubblefield got fired. And you do a little research, you figure some things out. And I highly encourage people to go check that episode out, why the Nittany Lions fired Taylor Stubblefield and bring Bobby Ingram back home. But obviously that's not the case anymore because now Penn State has Marques Hagans in the fold. And I'm excited about the addition. My preference was Bobby Ingram because it just felt sentimental. But again, James Franklin knows what he's doing. He's targeting that DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And that's only going to make the grounds a lot better. Penn State will be more successful on the recruiting front. And Marques Hagans is just go ask anybody at Virginia, and they're disheartened right now. They didn't think they'd lose him. But on to wrestling, and then we'll get into Penn State men's basketball. I mean, Penn State, Cale Sanderson, Bryce Jordan Center, that incredible atmosphere, and you're going to get that again this Friday against Penn State, between Penn State and Iowa. And we'll have Jeff Byers, the voice of Penn State wrestling, back on to preview that one and to recap Michigan and Michigan State from the expert himself. But I'm going to give you some of my takeaways. 30-8 win over number 3 Michigan. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. Now, did we not tell you? Did Jeff Byers and I not try to tell you? If you came to Locked On Nittany Lions, you knew this is what kind of match it was going to be. You knew. The experts, gotta love the experts, right? They said this was going to be a close one, that it was going to come down to heavyweight, and Penn State won 8 out of the 10 matches, which Jeff and I expected. So it wasn't close. Michigan obviously jumped out to a good start because they have someone ranked at the lighter weight, and Gary Steen is still trying to find himself as a wrestler at 125. He's a redshirt freshman, but he struggled, and Michigan got out to that start, and then after that, up until heavyweight, Penn State won 8 matches in a row, and it was really no contest. So thank you, experts, for giving us the prediction that this would have been a 1 or 2. This would have been decided by 2 or 3 points, and just not the case. My other takeaway include, Levi Haynes, Alex Facundo, they are the real deal, and Haynes needs to remain the starter. Burn his red shirt. I don't care. Set it on fire. Burn it. 3-1 sudden victory over number 10, Will Lewan. That is the younger brother of Titans offensive tackle Taylor Lewan, if you remember that. Haynes he's got a fire in him. He really just understands it at 18 years old. I mean, he is a true freshman. Now, there's the debate. What are they going to do with his red shirt? Because people believe that Penn State doesn't need him to win a national title, a Big Ten title. And I believe that to be true. Now, I'm eager to break down Iowa with Jeff Byers, and we'll get into that a little more about what Penn State ultimately wants to do with Levi Haynes, because they're very close to kind of getting to that point of, do we burn the red shirt because they don't need him, but it might be in their best interest to kind of think long term, but that's why the debate is there. And then Alex Facundo with a 6-5 win. It took criteria because number 5, Cam Amin, who was Miles Amin's younger brother, they went down to the wire, went to tiebreaker, and then Facundo had the advantage in riding time because it was 5-5. And then there was that criteria. But both these guys can contend for Big Ten titles. They're going to be All-Americans for sure. Facundo is a redshirt freshman, so there's no debates about where he's going to be in the lineup. Haynes is kind of this, it's in this little gray area here. But national contention is tough for these guys as individuals, but it's definitely possible. It is definitely possible. They've showed me everything I need to see. And in years' time, they will be top 4 easily. But right now, for as young as they are and to see them succeed as they have, I've been very impressed. Moving on, my final takeaway from this one, Greg Kirkfleet and Mason Paris, they do not disappoint, and it is probably one of the better rivalries in all of college wrestling right now. And it's shaping up to be a wild finish in the Big Tens and the NCAAs, and Paris got the win. He won 3-1 in a decision that tightened the series up. It's now 3-2 because Kirkfleet had a 2-match advantage, but now it is Kirkfleet 3 and Paris 2. And this is, I expected this. It's going to flip the rankings. It was 1 versus 2, Kirkfleet versus Paris, and now Mason Paris, since he has the latest win, is now the number 1 ranked heavyweight, and Kirkfleet does drop to 2. I mean, the sold-out Bryce Jordan Center is a spectacle to behold. The atmosphere will be even better for Iowa. And some people might ask why Penn State doesn't do this, why they don't go to the Bryce Jordan Center a lot more. A couple reasons. One, tradition, being in Rec Hall. And then number 2, you do have to pay for the Bryce Jordan Center to wrestle there, to participate there. So you need the funds. You need to be able to invest in that. They can't just show up and wrestle in the Bryce Jordan Center whenever they want. You have to rent the Bryce Jordan Center. So I think that's something that has been brought up to me a lot. Well, if Penn State gets these sellout crowds, why don't they do it more? It's to build that tradition of this is a special moment for special dual meets. Because I'm not sure if they'd be able to sell out the Bryce Jordan Center for a match against Clarion, for example. Let's just take that one. But it's amazing. It is, and I'm excited for Iowa as well. Takeaways from the 34-6 win over Michigan State. There's some fighting Gary Steen. Just got done saying, Gary Steen was having trouble finding his footing. And then he gets a 3-1 sudden victory over number 24, Tristan Luan. Good to see, and that builds some confidence for the young wrestler. And then Levi Haynes got the day off. I'm not sure why he was out of the lineup against Michigan State, and maybe that was to preserve the red shirt, figure out what's going to go on, because there is Iowa coming up, because people are expecting Haynes to be the starter for that wrestling, that dual meet at 157. Terrell Barraclough lost his job. And if there wasn't the debate for Levi Haynes to keep that red shirt, maintain it, Barraclough's done. I think this was his chance to prove himself in a battle with Haynes, and Haynes could be a little shaken up for all we know, and they're thinking big picture towards Iowa. But a 6-2 loss for Barraclough to number 15, Chase Saldate, and that's Michigan State's wrestler. So that's tough competition, but I just don't know that Barraclough is better than Haynes at this point. I think Haynes, with the way that he's been able to consistently upset top-ranked wrestlers, and we don't know what goes on behind the scenes in the mat room, and Haynes might be dominating there as well between the two. So it's disappointing to see, but I think Barraclough has taken a step back here, and Haynes has come forward. And then last takeaway from Michigan State is Max Dean is back to his best form. A 4-0 win over number 14, Cameron Caffey. And Dean, what stands out to me about this one is that Cameron Caffey beat him last year. In a similar stage. It was at Michigan State, but Dean avenged his loss to Caffey from a year ago. And as we remember, he struggled early on, but now he's really settled in, and he's ranked number 4. But I think that's going to correct itself as we continue to get to the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament. And like I said, to kind of round it all up, it's just not fair. Penn State wrestling is just too dominant. They're now 10-0 overall. They're 3-0 in the Big Ten. But number 2, Iowa's the true test. You're getting a lot of top 10 matchups. You're getting a lot of top 20 matchups between wrestlers that are good on both sides. And I think these are going to be big tests for guys like Shane Van Ness. It's another test for Levi Haynes and Alex Facundo, the younger guys who are really rounding out this lineup, because Carter Starachi and Aaron Brooks and Max Dean, Greg Kirkfleet's definitely going to have his hands full with Tony Cassiope, but number 2 Iowa is going to be that true test, and it'll be a lot closer. And Jeff Byers and I will preview it later on this week. But there's really no one else who can challenge Penn State at the end of the day. I think it's just Iowa, not even the number 3 team in the country. Michigan came in here and got embarrassed. And other than the lightweight, Penn State's lineup is stacked all the way through. That's what it comes down to. It's Locked On Nittany Lions. My name is Zach Seyko. Adam Sheetz, Penn State men's basketball insider, is going to join me to talk about Penn State's win over Nebraska and the game against Rutgers coming up next. Welcome back to Locked On Nittany Lions. My name is Zach Seyko, and joining me, special guest, the expert as always when it comes to Penn State men's basketball. That is Adam Sheetz with Penn State's Com Radio. He is the Penn State men's basketball insider. Adam, thanks for joining me. And now we have the fitting show background so that we don't have to do all the introductions.
Oh, yeah, great to be here. Great background today, too. So, always good time to sit on and talk about Micah Shrewsbury and the Nittany Lions.
I made it all by myself, so I appreciate it. With the help from Locked On, of course. They do a great job with imaging and backgrounds and graphics. So, but no one came here to talk about production of the show. They wanted to hear about Penn State men's basketball getting the win over Nebraska, and that was the coaches versus cancer game. So that was very important for the Nittany Lions to get done. What ultimately did you take away from that one? It was a 76-65 advantage for Penn State. Andrew Funk was lights out. It's a quad 1 win, if I'm not mistaken. But Nebraska still is on the lower side of the Big Ten. So what do you believe Penn State was able to gain from this one?
They were able to win a game they were supposed to win, which is huge. These are the games. It's not one of those games where you look at like, oh, they won this game. We're going to be sitting there in March looking at the resume like they beat Nebraska at home. But it's a game that you don't now have to look at it and say Penn State lost to Nebraska at home. You got to look at that, maybe holding them back. Able to get the win. It was a little streaky. It's kind of been the way they've been this season. Got out to a 10-0 lead early, struggled for the rest of the second half, went in the locker room up 6. Nebraska came out with a good game plan early, but then Penn State's offense really got going in that second half, was able to score a lot of points down the stretch. Andrew Funk, obviously you mentioned, Seth Lundy got very hot in the second half as well, and that's really what helped them get this win. And it seems to be very consistent. When those two are going, specifically Andrew Funk and Seth Lundy, they're one of the toughest teams to beat in the Big Ten because they really open it up for guys like Jalen Pickett, Cam Winter to go inside and make plays on the interior. So when they're able to knock it down from outside, completely changes the way teams have to guard Penn State.
Live by Andrew Funk, die by Andrew Funk. That was, I mean, ultimately what I've come to at the middle of the season here, right, is that whenever Andrew Funk is unstoppable, I mean, 23 points in that game. And really he is the best 3-point shooter in the country. The statistics say so. Seth Lundy's number 2. They're interchangeable. So yeah, for them both to have quality contributions behind Jalen Pickett. Now, Jalen Pickett did have 7 turnovers. Did Nebraska somewhat show how to limit him, or did he just kind of have an off game from there?
I think that was kind of an anomaly for him. He was kind of trying to force some things at times that weren't really there, kind of trying to make that play. Because he is a guy that when his teammates really get involved and get hot, he tries to get them the ball. So when Andrew Funk's going like that, or Seth Lundy's got it going, he's going to try to get them the ball as much as he can. Sometimes put him in some tough situations. Had an offensive foul down the stretch of the game near the end of it that kind of gave him that 7th turnover. So he was kind of trying to force plays. It was weird. I was listening to Steve Jones and Dick Girardi talk about it on Penn State's radio call, and they kind of mentioned that Jalen Pickett went a month without 7 turnovers and had 7 turnovers in one game against Nebraska. So seems kind of like an anomaly, like Nebraska did a good job guarding him. But that's not something I don't think other teams are going to bank, that Jalen Pickett's going to be so careless with the basketball and have those turnovers game in and game out.
I mean, he had a double-double, it's not like at the end of the day, I wasn't like, man, he was, held to whatever, a triple single, if you will, for Draymond Green, as that was said by made famous by Jordan Poole, another Big Ten basketball player. But I mean, double-digit rebounds, double-digit points. So I'm happy with the performance. I just thought it was interesting that he was held off of the assists. And then, he has about 2 or 3 turnovers. That was 7 against a Nebraska team. I would expect that against someone like Rutgers, who are going to talk about in just a moment here. Adam Sheetz joining me on the show to talk about Penn State men's basketball. Recent win over Nebraska from the weekend in the coaches versus cancer game. 13-6 overall, 4-4 in conference. So they're still middle of the pack. One more player that stood out to me from that game, and now he's got a feature article written about him. There's some attention on him, and that is true freshman guard Kanye Clary, Adam, who logged 19 minutes in this game. I was surprised that he's kind of the one that showed out in this instance. Evan Mahaffey was a little limited. Keba Jai, we still haven't seen him light up the box score just yet. But it was Kanye Clary who had somewhat of a surprising performance out of all the true freshmen that are available in this cycle.
Yeah, Kanye played really well, and I think that was huge for Penn State. He's a guy that, has a very interesting story with Penn State. Penn State offered him. He was the first guy to commit in this recruiting class to Coach Shrewsbury, wanted to play at Penn State with Coach Shrewsbury, and he's come and he's really embraced his role. He said after the game in the post-game press conference that him and Coach Shrewsbury have always really seen eye to eye on a lot of things. That's kind of really helped him. He's able to go out there. He plays free, normally comes in for Cam Winter, another undersized guard, so has a role model on the team, and he's playing alongside guy like Jalen Pickett, who's going to dominate the ball, where Kanye Clary can really just pick his spots, be himself, get to the basket, look to make plays. And he's a very good defender for his size. So he does a lot of things well that I think Coach Shrewsbury likes. Evan Mahaffey, as you mentioned, he got in foul trouble in this game against Nebraska, fouled out of the game. Really was never able to get in a rhythm. He's a guy who plays very aggressive defensively. So if he's in foul trouble, limits what he can do. And Keba Jai, he's playing out of position, forced to play the 5 when he's normally a natural 4. So kind of tough for him. He's still trying to learn the position, learn the ropes on a very veteran team as a freshman. So you try to get those two going, but Kanye Clary, when he has played this season, usually has played really well. And he's a guy that if they can get him going and make him a consistent contributor off the bench, going to be very huge for them as they end January and get into February and March.
Yeah, Keba Jai only logging 5 minutes. He seems to be kind of the diamond of this class, which I think can be a really impactful class, but we're just not in Micah Shrewsbury's system. I think people need to understand that this is not your traditional, the high school player that comes in and goes right to the NBA. They're going to have a little bit of a journey. Speaking of which, I mean, this is kind of something that's not even in my show notes, but I think about it now, is Jamil Brown seemed to be that guy who was going to be more of the centerpiece, as opposed him and Keba Jai were interchangeable depending on who you asked, but we have not seen any of Jamil Brown. Do you have any insight into that? If there's just a learning curve for him, or if they're trying to preserve a red shirt by chance, what is the deal with Brown?
Coach Shrewsbury talked about it a little bit because he had some games where he played a good bit and he really came in early, and some games where he hasn't. And I think the big thing they've really consistent been is the defensive side of the basketball with Jamil Brown. He's a great shooter, could shoot the ball well. Yeah. Problem is he's on a team with a lot of guys who could shoot the ball well. So he's really jumbled in with a lot of different guys. And the one thing, Coach Shrewsbury put this upon himself because they chose to heavily focus on offense this offseason. So a lot of the freshmen were behind defensively. So, you see him sometimes out of position defensively, maybe not knowing the right read or the way they're going to guard some situations. That's really limited what Jamil Brown can do. He's a guy that has tremendous upside and a guy this program's really looking forward to, hopefully, maybe if it's toward the ends of this season or next season, really becoming a huge contributor for them because he can shoot the lights out. And once he gets that defensive side of the ball, he's going to be a very tough player in this conference.
Yeah, that's a very good point. There's a bigger need, literally and figuratively, about Keba Jai, who's needed in the front court, but Penn State is so loaded in the back court with Jalen Pickett and Funk and Lundy and Dalian Johnson, et cetera, that there's just not room for Jamil Brown at this point. That's why we bring you on, Adam. Let's pivot to Rutgers now. Penn State, when I looked at the projections, you want to get a head start because this game isn't until Tuesday when they take on Rutgers. And Penn State, okay, I thought this would be a pretty even game. They're going to be on the road against the Scarlet Knights, and ESPN's only giving them they're giving Penn State a 20% chance to win this game. That means Rutgers has an 80% chance to win this game. I'm just not buying it because Rutgers checks in at 13-6 overall, 5-3. I respect the win against number 1 Purdue on the road, I might add, and they beat them by 1 point. But I feel like this is a team that Penn State can play very close, yet ESPN says otherwise.
And there's a lot going Rutgers' way. I think it's going to be a very close game. Rutgers is a team that's not that team that just blows anyone out. They had a really close win against Northwestern as well. Very similar to the Purdue game. Cam Spencer hit a big shot at the end to win it for the Scarlet Knights. He's been very good. The transfer from Loyola, Maryland, his ability to shoot the ball has helped the Scarlet Knights a lot. But I think, as you said, there's going to be kind of these matchup things that Penn State's going to have to watch out for. Cliff Omori has been really good inside for Rutgers, something Penn State's going to have to deal with. Again, another undersized team that they're going to play, a team with a dominant big guy that they're going to have to compete with. And it's always tough to win at Rutgers, one of the toughest places to play in the Big Ten. Penn State has struggled there at times, so it's going to be tough to go there and win. I think they match up well. It's going to be a very similar theme. They have to shoot the ball well, pass the ball well, be strong with the basketball, and play tough defense on the interior. If they do, they're going to be in a close game and give themselves the opportunity to win. It's just going to be they're going to have to knock down that shot. As Coach Shrewsbury said after Wisconsin, sometimes they just haven't been able to make that shot to win those games. So we'll see maybe if they can go and get one. That would be another potential quad one win for the Nittany Lions, boost that tournament resume. Yeah. Huge week for them with Michigan at the end of the week as well. So definitely an opportunity to go get one in Piscataway, but a lot has to go right. And Rutgers is a very good team. Penn State's not going to overlook them.
And Rutgers is one of those physical. They're an ugly team. They win these games by close margins. They don't score. They're not going to light you up for 80, 90 points. And they really only have two really good players. Omori, as you mentioned, in the front court, he's getting you probably 10 and 10 almost every single night. 10 points, 10 rebounds. I think he's going to get more against Penn State just because they're not as vaunted in the front court themselves. But it's just Cam Spencer, and he shoots at a 44% three-point clip. But I feel like put Jalen Pickett on him and then kind of cycle between Seth Lundy and Evan Mahaffey against Omori, and I think Penn State can pull this off on the road. How likely is it possible that Penn State does get the win, even though ESPN says they only win 20% of the time?
I think they have a good chance to win if they shoot the ball well, because Penn State, they're that team that no one knows how to predict how they're going to play, because when they shoot the ball really, really well and knock down all their shots, they're one of the best teams in the country. But you have the other thing of when they don't shoot the ball well, they're very vulnerable because they're going to give up a lot of those points inside. They're not going to win the battle in the paint, and they're really relying on that three ball. So if it's not going down, it's going to be tough for them to win. Obviously, as you mentioned, Cam Spencer, expects some Seth Lundy on him as well. Probably Keba Jai going to get a little bit of Cliff Omori, maybe Miles Dredd being a little more physical, definitely undersized, but will bang around on the interior with Cliff Omori. Another guy to watch out for, Paul Mulcahy from Rutgers. He's a very good, really tall guard. It's kind of interesting because Jalen Pickett's a guy who likes to go in the post, do a lot of things down there. Paul Mulcahy's a very interesting guy who's going to probably have him a little bit in this game with a lot more size and physicality that Jalen Pickett's seen at the guard position. So that's a little bit of an interesting matchup there that Rutgers is going to have to deal with, a little taller, more physical team that Penn State's going to play with Jalen Pickett, who likes to go inside at that 6'4" frame.
Adam Sheetz, the expert himself, insider for Penn State men's basketball, representing Penn State's Com Radio, joining us on the show. Adam, thanks for your time. For the listeners, though, because we do have, as dedicated as the watching audience is, there is the audio side of it. How can people connect with your work and stay up to date?
At Sheetz Adam on Twitter. You have a lot about Coach Shrewsbury during the week, during his pregame press conferences and postgame press conference. That's where you can find everything for this Penn State team.
All right, perfect. Adam Sheetz, as always, thank you so much. Penn State's going to take on Rutgers, and that is going to be January 24th. That is Tuesday, and tip-off is set for 6:30 p.m. on the Big Ten Network. Adam, can't wait to have you back on to discuss that one next.
Yep, thanks for having me. Anytime, Zach.
Thanks again for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen every day. Make sure you check out our brand new podcast, and that is Locked On College Basketball. Everything you need to know about college basketball all in one place. Plus, you get to hear from big-name experts, insiders, coaches, and players. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much for getting us over 800 subscribers. I really, really appreciate the support. And we'll have a lot of exciting content coming up in this week. Like I said, special guest Jeff Byers is going to be returning to the show. We are working on lining up some other special guests as we round out the month. And Penn State, of course, getting Marques Hagans, and we'll be able to talk about that and discuss his impact more. For all your Penn State football, men's basketball, wrestling news, keep it right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.